point losses to the fucking Liberty. Maybe those two 50-point losses. Okay. But like, this is like the Fever were destroyed. Like they didn't even attempt to run a Caitlin Clark and a Leah Boston pick and roll. They didn't even attempt to do it. They didn't attempt it. And that's on the coach. When you are not attempting, so when you're not attempting to do what is seen by many as your most deadly weapon. Why? Because you got spooked. You got spooked. Caitlin turned.
The debate around Stephanie White's future with the Indiana Fever has moved past frustration and into something more fundamental. Whether the coaching philosophy and the roster's most important player are simply incompatible, and whether the organizations has the willingness to resolve that before the damage becomes permanent. The tactical failures in the Portland loss were specific and traceable. Indiana held an 8-2 lead just 2 minutes into the game when White sent 3 bench players to the scorer's table to replace Clark, Boston, and Hall. By the time the substitution was made at 8-4, Portland responded with a 15-2 run.
Spooked. You got spooked. Caitlin turned it over once and you got spooked. You went down and you got spooked. You got spooked. You were 8-2 up after 2 minutes and sent 3 players from the bench. You sent 3 players from the bench to come back down and to come down and sub on for 3 starters. 2 minutes into the game. You had set. Caitlin Clark got pulled after 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Between Clark's removal at around the 3-minute mark and 2 minutes into the second quarter, Indiana made a single field goal, a Raven Johnson runner, in a game where Portland was intentionally leaving Johnson unguarded, essentially daring Indiana to use her as a shooter, rather than exploiting her value as a screener or cutter. Instead, Johnson, and later Ty Harris, who went 1 of 5 from 3, were positioned exactly where Portland wanted them. Clark re-entered, turned the ball over once early in the second quarter, and was thereafter reduced to functioning as a decoy in the corner, while Portland doubled and triple-teamed her on every touch. Rather than drawing up actions to exploit the defensive attention Clark was commanding, the coaching staff responded by keeping her off the ball entirely.
After 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So did Leah Boston. You were 8-4 up. You sent them to the scorer's table earlier than that. You wanted to pull 3 of your starters after 2 minutes. And what happened? 15-2 run. 15-2 run. 1 field goal made. 1 field goal made between the time when you took Caitlin Clark off after 3 minutes and 2 minutes into the second quarter. 1 field goal made.
The defensive breakdowns were equally pointed. Clark, already in foul trouble, was repeatedly switched onto Carla Lai, a guard fast enough to beat almost anyone, and onto Megan Gustafson in the post. Neither matchup was winnable. Help defense was disorganized, with the center blitzing the ball handler on certain possessions, while leaving Ezi Magbegor open for layups in the paint.
And 2 minutes into the second quarter, 1 field goal made. And it was a Raven Johnson runner, who, by the way, they didn't guard Raven Johnson. I don't think people realize that. They did not guard Raven Johnson. So, what happens? Another team tries to guard Raven Johnson. Or another team doesn't want to guard Raven Johnson and leaves Raven Johnson wide open. Do you use Raven Johnson as a screener, as a cutter? Try to use the gravity or the fact that no one's looking at her to try to get her some easy looks? Or do you leave Raven Johnson standing on the perimeter?
Portland deliberately ran their actions through Johnson, posting her up with Gustafson and Engstler in sequence, accumulating fouls until she was neutralized. The fact that Indiana's most disruptive defender became the primary target of Portland's offense raises a genuine question about defensive preparation. The broader argument gaining traction is structural. Clark is a rhythm-dependent player whose greatest value comes when she has the ball frequently, early, and in actions designed around her.
Some easy looks. Or do you leave Raven Johnson standing on the perimeter chucking threes, which is what the other team wants? No, Raven Johnson's standing on the perimeter chucking threes. It is what it is. Ty Harris comes on the floor then for Raven Johnson. Doesn't matter. We're gonna leave Ty Harris shooting threes. Ty Harris shot 5 threes. 1 of 5. Fucking damn to shit. And then what happens then on the defensive end? Let's not even get started on the defensive end. You were soft. I literally came into the game saying the Indiana Fever, and the good thing is when it comes to Caitlin Clark, is that there are players.
She had 2 points and 3 assists in the first 2 minutes of the game before being pulled. A stretch that showed exactly what the offense looks like when she is operating. What followed showed what it looks like when she is not. Conservative, possession-oriented, resistant to using Clark as the primary engine, may be functional with a different rosters. With this one, it is producing losing basketball despite having elite talent.
Is that there are players that she can guard on the Portland Fire team. As long as she doesn't have to guard Carla Late. But you soft switched and made her guard Carla Late every single possession. And if she wasn't guarding Carla Late, she was guarding Megan Gustafson. She was either guarding a center or she was guarding a guard that is too quick for her. I'm going to be honest. Carla Late's too quick for nearly anybody. She was being left on an island where it's either give up an open layup or foul. No.
Portland, now sitting at 6-4, and having beaten Indiana convincingly twice, represents the comparison that stings most. They are an expansion team playing modern, versatile, up-tempo basketball. Indiana, with objectively superior individual talent, is playing slower, older, and less coherently. The conclusion being drawn in many corners is that the organization faces a binary decision. Build around Stephanie White's coaching philosophy and acquire personnel that fits it, or recommit to building around Clark's strengths and find a coach equipped to do that.
Where it's either give up an open layup or foul. No help, nothing. And then your idea of help is running with your center, having your center run up and blitz the ball for some reason while nobody else knows what's going on and leaving Meg Gustafson open for a layup. It was pathetic. It was pathetic on both ends of the floor tactically. They then go into a zone. Caitlin Clark's in foul trouble. They go into a zone. And what do they do?
Attempting both simultaneously has produced neither. The longer the current arrangement continues without resolution, the more Clark's market value, should a trade ever be explored, will erode alongside the team's record. Ahead of the rematch against Portland, Caitlin Clark spoke at the podium and addressed several areas of focus for the Indiana Fever, including the team's defensive growth, how to handle Portland's pressure system, and the emergence of Raven Johnson off the bench. On defense, Clark acknowledged the team has simplified its approach in recent games and that the adjustment has helped.
Caitlin Clark's in foul trouble. They go into a zone. And what do? When Caitlin Clark comes back on the floor, they immediately go out of the zone. The first possession Caitlin comes back on the floor, she gets switched on to Carla Late and gets called for a phantom foul. Because you go out of the zone, you don't want to hide Caitlin. You don't want to hide anybody. And by the way, they were picking on Caitlin because she was in foul trouble. And they didn't want Caitlin to get into a rhythm. And Caitlin's a rhythm player. She always has been. I've always said this. If you need to give Caitlin lots of touches and lots of touches quick, what does she do? Caitlin Clark has 2 points and 3 assists.
Earlier in the season, Indiana relied heavily on switching, which created coverage inconsistencies. Scaling that back and establishing clearer defensive assignments has provided more stability. Clark pointed to the growing comfort level among teammates as a key factor. With several new roster members and Clark herself having missed significant time last season, building the kind of trust required to move as a cohesive defensive unit takes. The early part of the year, by her description, featured 5 individuals operating somewhat independently.
On tape is really good. They're a great team. They play really hard. Similar in that regard to Golden State and what we just faced. Even though they're coming off of a back-to-back, that I don't expect them to let up at all. They're going to pick up full. They're going to be disruptive. I think for us, I think we got to get the ball inside to our post players. I think that's one way or one key to the game that will help us win is to get AB and Mo and really whoever our post players are, the ball in the paint and let them go to work. But yeah, I mean, they're a great team. What they've been able to put on tape at the beginning part of this year is really impressive, especially with this franchise coming back.
That is starting to change. On the offensive side, heading into the Portland game, Clark identified getting the ball into the post as a central priority. Feeding Aaliyah Boston and Monique Billings in the paint was framed as one of the clearest paths to creating advantages against Portland's defense. She also noted that Portland's full court pressure and run and jump trapping will demand discipline with the ball. Moving it quickly, maintaining proper spacing, having outlets available, and resisting the urge to dribble through traps rather than passing out of them.
Put on tape at the beginning part of this year is really impressive, especially with this franchise coming back. So you got to give them a lot of credit, but we feel like we have ways that we can try to exploit them in certain areas. It's just being able to stick to that.
Okay, just one for me. So I said that you guys have made strides defensively.
Yeah.
I know it's not where you guys want it to be yet, but as you guys continue to grow your chemistry, what specifically have you seen from the defensive end that you guys have improved on and want to highlight?
I think we've simplified a little bit, so I think that's helped us, especially these last few games.
Regarding Raven Johnson, Clark was direct in her praise. Johnson's career-high 16-point performance against Golden State was described as exactly the kind of spark the team needs from the bench. Shot-making, downhill drives, setting teammates up, and her consistent defensive intensity. Clark expects Johnson to grow into an increasingly important role as the season progresses.
These last few games, prior to this, we've done a lot of switching. I think that can make it easier at times, but I think there's still a level of physicality that we're beginning to play with, but we can improve on a lot still. But we've simplified some stuff, found things that have worked. I think through the early part of the season, you're trying some different stuff. Obviously, you have the preseason games, but when you get into early action, like it's still, testing the waters a little bit of what's going to work for, our personnel, and then obviously taking into consideration their personnel at the same time. But I think our attention to
White, for her part, addressed the defensive evolution from a structural standpoint, noting that simplified ball screen coverages, combined with the roster's versatility to go small and guard multiple positions, have given the team more flexibility. She described the qualities of an effective on-ball defender as active hands, active feet, staying balanced, guarding territory, and above all, mentality and discipline, framing it as much a mental endeavor as a physical one. The developing chemistry between Clark and Johnson was noted as a positive thread running through the week's coverage, a partnership that could prove meaningful as the season deepens, with Johnson's energy and Clark's playmaking creating a complementary dynamic that the team will likely lean on further.
Their personnel at the same time, but I think our attention to detail and, the more comfortable you get playing with your teammates. Obviously, we have quite a few new members, and I wasn't in the lineup even much last year, so just building that connection, like that's as much as that's important on the offensive end, it's just as important on the defensive end. You got to all work together, and I think we're all starting to kind of move as 5, like just all as one. I think early on it was kind of 5 individuals out there, so I think that's the area we've kind of improved the most through the early part of the year, but I know Steph wants us to get better and better, and we'll continue to improve in that area too. Yeah. Anything else? That's all we got? You go ahead, ma'am.
Well, you talked about teammates getting more comfortable. Raven had a career high 16 against Golden State. How have you seen her just get more comfortable coming from college to now?
I thought Raven was amazing last game. Brought that spark off the bench that we kind of needed, and getting confident with her shot making ability. She's getting downhill, getting her feet in the paint, setting her teammates up, and then obviously the thing she can do every single game is she's getting downhill, getting her feet in the paint, setting her teammates up, and then obviously the thing she can do every single game is be disruptive defensively. She picks up full. So I think she's starting to figure it out and get more comfortable. She's capable of so many amazing things. So she's going to be a big part of this team, like going down the stretch here, especially throughout the year. Is she's a piece off the bench that we really need to be successful. And I think she's done a tremendous job early on, just learning and kind of putting that to use throughout the game.
Small teams playing with versatile lineups, and having the versatility that KK brings offensively and defensively, especially when we were in a lot of our switches, has kind of kept Didi out of the rotation. Certainly not something that's going to continue. I mean, the matchups that we have moving forward, when you think about our next 3 or 4 games, I expect Didi to be back in the rotation.
What are you seeing from Portland's defense, and just in terms of like how Alex wants to run things? Seems like intensity and trapping are a big piece of his puzzle, and how you attack that.
Yeah, we got to take care of the ball. They're gonna come with the pressure, full court pressure. The run and jump style trapping. We can't run away from the ball. We've got to make sure that we have outlets. Being able to be available in the quarter court with the hard hedges and the traps. And we got to get the ball out of our hands. We got to move it. We can't try to dribble through those things. It's about spacing, it's about timing, and it's about making ourselves available.
I'll ask you the same question I asked CC, in the sense of you guys are still working on your defense.